Taavet Hinrikus. Most of Estonia knows this guy, obviously, because it is his job to run naked through the streets of London, and he's the founder of TransferWise. So, Michael and Taavet, give them a big applause and have a great chat.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Well, welcome. We're doing a fireside chat here. We have no fire, and we're supposed to be chatting. And Taavet's Estonian, which means chatting can be quite difficult sometimes. Luckily, he's been in England.
I will answer everything in binary.
He answers everything in binary, yes or no, sometimes, for the unknown state. But luckily, he's been living in London, I think, quite a long time now, so he's got used to a bit more of that. So, where to start with this story? I mean, Taavet, you had some news the other day about TransferWise. It became profitable.
Yeah, so I mean, that's in payments business, you know that it's a scale game. So we've always known that, you know, at some point we hit sufficient scale that the whole company will break even. But it wasn't, you know, it never has been kind of a huge milestone or something that we're going to celebrate. You know, we've been profitable since beginning of the year, producing cash, which is kind of cool. But you know, the question that we're really focused about is kind of how do we make sure that in 5 or 10 years from now we get to a point where we have the most impact and make sure that we have the biggest business at that point.
Yeah, look, there's been sort of criticism about, you know, TransferWise is not a real business. It's just throwing money away. It's just subsidizing. What have all the skeptics said to you since then?
So actually, my favorite one, whom I haven't gone back to, there's a journalist at FT Alphaville who she promised to eat her hat if it turns out that we're a profitable business. So I need to follow up with her about this one and kind of maybe we can organize a big hat eating party for her.
She could maybe participate in one of your advertising runs down the center of the city and that.
That was a big argument she made. All you guys do is stupid advertising, so you can't be a real business. But you know, to be honest, we've never, you know, we've let people believe that, you know, yeah, I mean, it's kind of, you know, we take money from VCs and, you know, we just do stuff with it. We've never been overly keen to debunk it, you know, internally. We've been pretty focused on making sure we have sound unit economics for a very long time. So, you know, we kind of knew that even though one market could be loss-making for a while, at one point it turns the corner, and then if you stack up a sufficiently large number of markets, then inevitably you will break even at some point. And when you break even is really a function of kind of how quickly you are, how aggressively you keep on investing. But, you know, even doing it aggressively at some point, if the fundamentals are sound, you will end up breaking even.
When did you realize that? When was the first point when you thought this is going to be good, this is working? Not just we're going to get a lot of customers, we're going to annoy everybody, but it's actually great. Was there some event that happened or time?
I think there was probably 3-4 years ago.
Yeah.
Like it's been probably about the past 2 years where we've actually, you know, had a very strong plan and we've known how the finance is looking and paid a bit more attention to it. But, you know, the fact that it works, I think, has been visible to us and, you know, people who know the metrics for probably 3-4 years.
So that's 3 years after you started. You had a period where something like that, right? So when did you start? 2011? Was it 2000? Yeah, so 3 years after that, it took 3 years for you to figure out, oh, this may be working or not. And
yeah, and I think there is still, you know, even I would say there is still, you know, 2 ways you can do it. I mean, you could, we started out being quite aggressive early on, which I think has worked very well for us. Yeah. We launched with business in UK, then, you know, we added new countries, and so on and so on. So whereas, you know, could have focused on only staying in UK, making sure you get the UK business and the company may be profitable, and then start expanding. And I think, you know, there are still 2 schools of thought about it. You know, I do think that for us it worked very well to get into aggressive mood early on, and while, you know, I guess 4 or 5 years ago we had belief, 3 or 4 years ago we knew that the model works. It did look scary when you're running at £2 million of revenue a month and you lose 2.5 million. So that was definitely scary, and that was kind of as close as 2 years ago. But at that point we already knew how it all stacks up.
And then it's just a matter of getting the money in from the clever or dumb investors and using it to grow or something like that. And really, once you've proven the model, you don't really, I mean, you probably do care where the money comes from, but at some level you don't care where the money comes from as long as it comes because you're in control.
Yeah. I mean, you're only in control once you are producing cash. You can even make an argument, I feel very good about TransferWise, but you can push a company to profitability, but then you can also fall off the cliff again.
Right.
So I think to really feel comfortable, you need to have a pretty large margin.
Yeah.
But the question then comes, maybe at that point you also become too lazy. So you need to make sure that you keep the drive and aggression and risk taking in the business while making sure that it stays sound.
Yeah, I mean those first 3 years are interesting for many people who are here because they're founders of small companies and looking for that. So how did you get through that? Obviously with drive and all those things, but tell us some stories about that period and how you kept going and some nights when you, I guess, woke up and thought, oh shit, or something.
I actually think the most important and most dangerous thing is kind of the ending up in the zombie phase. Yeah. So it's what you should do, and it is hard to do, but I think what you really should do is think about, okay, here's the business we want to build. Here is what success looks like. So 2 years after launching, we want to be here. Whether that's one customer paying you $1 million, whether it's 1 million customers paying you £1 each, whether it's 10 million customers. Here's what success looks like. Here's where we're driving to. And if 2 years later, you're only halfway there or 1/3 of the way there, then you should pack it up and think of something else. Versus, I think what happens too many times is people realize, shit, it didn't quite work, but they will keep on trying. And then they end up raising shit rounds of money and kind of just, lengthening the pain. And yes, then, you look, there are a couple companies, maybe gaming companies are notoriously known. There's some people not far from here who, well, it's the 51st game where they hit gold. But I still think that's much more of a rarity versus something you should plan for. Like, if you set out to do this and it's not working, then be a man, shut it down, and take the next plan and work on that. I think as much harder to do because it's easy to lay off your people, end up with a team of 10, and you keep on working and working and working. But that's not the point.
Yeah. So this whole idea of pivoting and all of that there's never a black and white answer. But really, you're not a big favor of that. You say, well, we try something. You have to be adaptive to move, but not to pivot and all of that.
Some things inevitably will change compared to your original plan. We were lucky enough that actually we're still doing the very same thing that we started doing 6 years ago, and now we're doing more and more. The moments of pivot for us, for example, could be we launched the business believing it's going to be a peer-to-peer currency exchange. We quickly realized that it's not currency exchange, and peer-to-peer is great, but it's not essential. Kind of the evening of the first day, we realized, okay, we have people sending money from pounds to euros, but nobody doing it the other way. So we can stay as a purist and tell people, you got to wait.
Yeah.
And they would still be waiting, and we would still be waiting. Versus, it was like, okay, let's figure the shit out. And I went to my Swedbank and I exchanged money at Swedbank, and we made a customer happy. And that's kind of how we built the business. Now we're sending money to India, which is purely one way. We still hope, and it's going to happen at some point. We will start sending money from India, but now it's one way. And again, you could say we didn't set out to do this. We set out to do a peer-to-peer currency exchange. We actually realized why people love us is for getting money from A to B very quickly for a very low cost, and that's why we have 1 million people using us now.
And that's the whole peer-to-peer story actually lasted a long time in your PR when it was probably only lasted a week in reality or something.
It's yes and wrong. I mean, still on the big routes, dollar, pound, euro, more than majority is peer-to-peer, and that's awesome. It drives our costs lower. It helps us do things faster. But now we've realized that even if, maybe for regulatory reasons we couldn't do peer-to-peer, the business would still survive. So.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, you're talking about being a global financial institution or something now. I read one of your articles yesterday or something, but you're talking about wanting to do that with the business bank account services, which you just launched, which look interesting. You're going to be a global financial institute, and really that means, in a way, does it mean moving over to the other side of to the black side, to the dark side, and working with the banks and all of that much closer than before?
I don't think it's in any way different to what we've been doing for 6 years. We could not exist in a world without banks. People still keep their money in a bank. So money comes from a bank and goes to a bank. Where in UK we're not too far from actually being able to work without banks because we're plugging into the local payment network on our own. And eventually, I believe that will happen globally. But people will still keep their money in a bank. So obviously, we live in a world where banks have an important role to play. And if anything, the thing which has been upsetting and kind of the reason we started TransferWise with Christo was really about the fact that banks are lying to us. So that's the stuff which I'm kind of allergic to. Seeing a banker lying, if there's an honest banker out there, I'd be the first one to give them a hug.
Yeah. How far away are you from being? I don't know where the metrics are to be a global financial institute. How far are you from that? It's a question on brand and it's
what does that really mean, a global financial institution?
I don't know. I think it means something about size. It means when are you as big as HSBC or when are you as big as...
And how do we measure size? Do we think about assets under management? Or maybe, we're never going to have assets under management comparable to HSBC. But maybe we have more happy customers today compared to HSBC.
That probably happened quite a long time ago.
Yeah. Our net promoter score runs a long way ahead of any bank in the world. So in terms of happy customers, we are probably the biggest global financial institution.
So I talk a lot with banks, and as an investor, we're looking at a lot of fintech products and things. And how do banks fit into that? So many people are coming in and saying, oh, we're going to kill the banks or we're going to do something. It seems to have changed. That rhetoric seems to have changed in the last period where people realize there's a sort of a hierarchy or some sort of structure that...
So there's many ways to look at this. So I'll try to explain a few of these. So I think on one side what's happening to many fintech companies, they're realizing that going direct to market, going direct to consumers and small to medium businesses is bloody hard work. Building a brand, getting people to switch is really hard work. So you're seeing a lot of cooperation happen between banks and fintechs.
Yeah.
So banks are taking and skinning and reskinning and white labeling and sometimes even co-branding, as they're taking the fintech offerings and offering them together with a bank. And I think that's a perfectly legit way of doing things. At the same time, I still very strongly believe that there is room for a few new global financial services brands.
Yeah.
And we're building one of these. We're going direct to market, having a 10x differentiated product offering, which enables you to go after the customers and brings them onto your platform, versus having a 50% better offering where you might not have this luxury. And another angle to look at it is, if you look at what a bank does and lending, money transfer, asset management, kind of vertical after vertical, you look at the value-added services, and there is a tech company focused on doing that and doing that better than the bank does. So what's left for banks? Keeping your money. That's the only place which no tech company has yet figured a way to do better. It has to do with regulation, deposit insurance, etc. So, maybe the future looks at banks are these kind of vaults of money, and all the value-added services are done by fintech companies. Yeah. In reality, it's probably going to be a mix of everything. Mm-hmm. Different customer segments, different geographies, different regulatory reasons will force us to try and experiment with a number of different ways. But I don't think will see banks as they are today 10 years from now. So it's going to be different, but in which exact way will it be different? I don't know. Like, who's going to capture the biggest share of the economic upside? You know, is revenue going to shrink by 10x, by 2x? That's what we quite don't know.
Sounds like the phone business, where the revenue shrunk by a lot, but most of the phone companies seem to be pretty good business cases still. So we've got phoning in every product. We've got phoning integral to Facebook or something just built into it. You don't even think you're making a phone call anymore. It's just part of a communications experience. Probably the same with money, right?
I agree. And if you think of money, I think one example of this is you think of Taxify in Estonia, or then the four-letter ones. It's you think about how they've removed payment as a pain point.
Yeah.
Whenever I take a regular cab, I tend to walk out without paying, and then they get really angry. And you forget that they've taken away payment completely, and that's amazing as a customer experience. So I think I'd like to see that in many other parts of the world, and there's very little exciting about banking as a customer. Like there are very few interactions that you as a customer really want to have with your bank. Possibly none. Possibly none.
But it's nice to be able to buy something in a shop really easy or something without having to worry about it all. Anyway, you've grown a company from nothing. You became a founder instead of an employee of a small company, and then an employee of a big company. I mean, what's been the biggest sort of experience of yours or change in that? Suddenly you're responsible for 500 people, 1,000 people or something.
I think the biggest learning, and that's something which I learned at Skype, working with you and Niklas and Toivo and others, it's all about people. So it's about finding the right kind of people, bringing them on board and letting them do their best work. And then you can kind of, and not getting in the way too much, yet providing enough of a structure. And then, you can, I'm sure if after, with a beer or a few, we would brainstorm, we would see it all started going wrong in Skype with the wrong people. And I think,
yes.
That's, I think that,
But is getting away from it important? I've seen pictures of you in Alaska on helicopter skiing or doing something kind of extreme in it. Is that what you need? You need to sort of go all the way to an extremity, because the day-to-day is pretty extreme, actually. So to go on holiday, it has to be either doing absolutely nothing, which is presumably impossible, or going kind of completely mad.
I think that's something. I think that's something very personal. Like, in terms of different people have a different way how they can relax and unwind, and maybe some people have a tolerance for doing 12-hour days for 7 years in a row. I probably don't. I work bloody hard. Typically now I have kids, which makes life even more exciting. So I try to leave the office around 6ish, but then from 9 I'm working again at home.
Yeah.
And I do that 5-6 days a week. So, and now with TransferWise being large enough, I can take a week off and not even look at my email, which is a bit of a luxury. That we've just gotten to the stage, and I think having that balance is very important. And what I personally like is going somewhere, skiing or climbing a mountain or doing something like that. But whatever relaxes you is up to you. Some people want to read a book. Some people go on a cooking course.
How do you keep on top of it all then? I mean, you've got hundreds and hundreds of people and products and multiple languages, and I guess mistakes and screw-ups every single day of one sort or another.
It's about letting people have their fuck-ups.
Yeah.
I think it's also the question of it's a bit of the managerial journey of everyone starts out as an individual contributor, and then you become a manager or team lead, and then you become a manager of managers, and then you end up in the worst position, which is running a company where you really, you're in charge of everything, but you're doing nothing, and so I enjoy seeing, like, if I look at people in TransferWise, with some person who's struggling with area X, and you know what they need to do, but you kind of keep on waiting for them to figure it out themselves. When they come to you and saying, Taavet, I figured out that I need to let person X go. And it's like, yes, you've made it. You've gotten to the conclusion which
you wanted to get to yourself.
Yes, but people need to go through these journeys, and you need to let people make mistakes. Hopefully, let them make small mistakes, not catastrophic mistakes. And the hardest thing is letting go and knowing that you don't know everything, and being able to sleep fine with that.
I guess you left school early. We know that. You've said that before. You actually went back and completed your education at some point or other, but there must have been some things in that formal education that perhaps people are critical of, you never learned, or you never learned proper physics or maths or something, I don't know what, but has any of that mattered? I guess not. You seem to be doing well. It's a very rhetorical question. What did you get out of the MBA story, for example? You went back into that after you left Skype, I think it was then.
I think what happens actually a lot in tech startups, there's no tech startup anymore. People have a fair degree of arrogance, a fair degree of confidence, and as a result, I think there is way too much reinventing that happens. People end up reinventing the laws of physics.
Yes.
While as you could actually take something which someone else figured and use it, and you might actually get things done quicker. I dropped out of Tallinn Technical University when we were getting Skype going, because it was just a lot more exciting to work on Skype. And then when I left Skype, I was like, okay, didn't have a great plan what to do. Went to business school for a year. I actually think every single thing that I learned during the year in business school was really valuable, and having, at that point I had maybe a dozen years of work experience, you could relate most of the things to real world and see, bloody hell, micro and macroeconomics actually make sense. Mm-hmm. Why I realized that was because I had that experience of seeing how it actually all works together. I was looking at people who maybe came to business school, I was probably on one extreme with 12 years of work experience, and the other extreme was people who came straight from undergraduate, and they were like, why are we learning something about organizational behavior? It made no sense to them. Whereas, when you've actually seen how organizations work, and mostly don't work, you realize there's a lot of truth to it. But the question is, your kind of ability to absorb that and put it into use in practical, in real life. Same time, we at TransferWise have a very hard time hiring MBAs, because they don't have many of the skills which work for us. Different companies different. Like Amazon right now is super well known for hiring lots of people from business school and being able to put them to use in a way which makes sense for everyone.
Okay, your organization isn't good at taking people in with high qualifications. It's more for taking people in with enthusiasm and energy and crafting them around TransferWise.
Depends on different areas. Like, business school we found hard for people to find a place in TransferWise. Engineering is different. But anyway, I guess in many ways we do work well by melding people around the TransferWise experience. There's a lot of stuff like being super customer-centric, which doesn't actually come from many other places.
Yeah, okay. Change the subject a bit. You've been doing some angel investment. You've been doing angel investing some time, actually. What have you learned through that? Can you do more? Can you manage it? Can you take it when all of these little companies you invest in don't work or aren't doing as well as you think and everything?
So I've probably over time scaled down my angel investing a lot. I'm now trying to do it in a way where I take a half-hour meeting with the founder and then I try to decide after that. And then what I tell these people is I tell them one thing. I'm probably a couple years ahead of your journey. I'm never ever going to give you a call. So if you think there is something I can help you with, give me a call.
Yeah.
And some people never call me, which is fine. Some people call me at inflection points. Maybe it's fundraising or some other bigger choice. And then, with some people I have a good relationship that we speak, and because they give me a call, they probably get something out of it. But I'm like in essence, in my head, I write that money off as soon as I invest it, and I think that's the only way of doing it.
Yes, I think you're right.
I mean, you're a professional investor, so you probably have a little bit of a different take on it, and you're a guardian of some other people's money, so it's very different. For me, it's an expensive hobby.
Yes, expensive hobby rather than a profitable hobby.
But to be honest, I've actually, I put it down to luck mostly.
Yeah.
I've made my money back multiple fold, and I think I have a ton of upside, but I put it down to luck. I still think of it as an expensive hobby, and as most hobbies, they pay back. Mostly through emotions. This one actually has paid back financially as well.
Okay. I think that's true of professional investment as well. To some extent, it's luck. A lot of luck involved with everything, as is starting a startup. So there we are. Okay, well, as we finish off, just one last question. You're part of the establishment now, so you're a financial services institute, regulated and everything like that. Are we going to see more of you running down the street naked?
So I think I look at this as a little bit of, so the short answer is probably no, but I look at it as a little bit of a growing up journey. Like there are things you do early on in life as an individual that you probably, things I did when I was 12, 17, 22, 25, I'm not going to do when I'm 35. I think the same with an organization. Yeah. What we've done in terms of marketing has also turned people off. Now we need to appeal to these people. So probably nudity isn't the right answer anymore. Oh. But I do hope that we will continue to retain the kind of the disruptor brand, and we'll do things differently. But I do believe that these things, what we did at first, were they the only ones which could have worked? Probably not. But they worked well for us, because if all me and Christoph had done was stand on a street corner with a sign, cheap money transfer, nobody would have given a flying fuck. So
that's it. That's the right way. Okay, thank you, Taavet. It's been a pleasure to speak to you after so long. And